Hello! In this video, I want to share top 5 facts about Arab-Israeli wars with you. What's interesting about the creation of the State of Israel is that the person most responsible for the fact that Israel is a state and that Israel managed to not get destroyed in the Israeli War of Independence or Israeli War of 1948, other than the people like Theodor Herzl that are the founders of Zionism and Ben Gurion, well, the person most responsible for the fact that Israel today is a state is actually Joseph Stalin. Okay, let me explain why is that the case. Back in the old days, it was actually the left that was pro-Israel, and the right, generally speaking, was against it. Definitely the German far right. But then that changed when Arabs became allies of the Soviet Union in the early 1950s. I'll explain why that happened. But okay, why did Stalin actually order Czechoslovakia to sell Israel weapons? Estimates say that somewhere around $500 million worth of weapons, and they also trained Israeli soldiers, sent them somewhere around 200 machine guns, a lot of automatic rifles. And given the fact that Arabs were also not well armed, those weapons definitely changed the outcome of the war. But okay, why was Stalin helping Israel while at the same time he was persecuting Jews in his own country? Well, okay, he had two reasons. Back at the time, Stalin saw militant Jewish groups that fought against the British Empire. They used terrorist methods. For example, they blew up Hotel David, killing many British soldiers in it. So Stalin saw militant Jewish terrorist groups as being revolutionary and anti-colonial, since they were fighting the British, and the Soviet Union was generally helping anti-colonial movements in that time period. And yeah, the Jewish terrorist groups were against the British Empire. They wanted independence, so they definitely were anti-colonial in that aspect. But Stalin also had one hidden reason for his support of those groups. So Arne Wested, in his book The Global Cold War, argues that Stalin actually was a visionary in this aspect, and he predicted that sooner or later the Americans are going to start helping Israel. Now, why is that? Well, he did realize that the evangelicals will be able to influence politics, and that they want to fulfill this old Bible prophecy about the land of the Jews being restored. And he realized that if America starts helping Israel, that means that Arabs and Islamic terrorists will start hating America. And that was Stalin's goal, like to move the Arab world into the arms of the Soviet Union. And in a way, Stalin's plan worked, although it worked much later than he wanted to. But 9/11 essentially happened as a result of that. Although what Stalin did not predict is that there was a clash between Islamism and communism in Afghanistan before Islamism turned on America. But okay, now for fact number 2, I want to answer the question, how did this beef between Israel and Palestine really start? Well, it started in World War I, actually. So Woodrow Wilson, he was a priest for a long time before he became president, was among those people that wanted to restore a land of the Jews, because he was a Christian and he believed that it is his Christian duty. The British Empire had much more pragmatic motives, so they proclaimed the Balfour Declaration, and they promised Jews that they will restore a land of the Jews, and they promised the Arabs the same land. Many Arabs were also unsatisfied with how Arabs were treated in the Ottoman Empire, so the British, they essentially promised the same land to both communities. And as a result, the British Empire also got a lot of money from the Rothschilds, the Rothschild family. And also there was the Jewish Legion fighting Great Britain. But yeah, once Britain actually won the war, both communities felt entitled to the same land because they died fighting for the British. Then, okay, an interesting piece of just information about the Israeli settlements are brought to us by Jean-Paul Sartre. So Jean-Paul Sartre famously stated that the only time in human history when Marxist utopia was achieved was on the kibbutz farms. So why is it that the kibbutz farms abolished private property, and in the early days, so up until the 1960s, there were like there was no private property on the kibbutz farms. So the only thing preventing you from eating all the food or smoking all the cigars was social norms. So why were Jews so leftist at the time? Well, because most of them were fleeing the Russian Empire that was brutally killing all the Marxist revolutionaries and anarchist revolutionaries. So before the Communist Revolution, many Jews had already fled from the Russian Empire, and they decided to try out their anarchist and communist ideas in their new homeland. But the irony is that from the 1960s or 1950s, actually the left, broadly speaking, was against the kibbutz movement because the kibbutz farms were established on the land that was taken away from the Palestinians. So the irony is, even if you achieve a perfectly equal society, one could say a perfectly just society on a smaller scale, that society can still be very unjust in terms of international law. And yeah, there are still some kibbutz farms today, but okay, a lot, they are now just a few percent of the Israeli economy. At their peak, they were like more than 10% of the Israeli economy. And okay, now to tell you something about one of the best planned military operations in modern history. I'm talking about the 6-Day War. In that war, Israel actually occupied the Gaza Strip from Egypt. But okay, how was Israel able to win against Egypt, Jordan and Syria in just 6 days? Well, they had a brilliant plan. So the Israelis knew that Nasser also installed fake airplanes, like to confuse the Israeli pilots. So the idea was, if you have fake airplanes on the airfield, then Jewish attackers, Israeli pilots, will be forced to waste their munition shooting fake planes. But what the Israelis did, they attacked first in one wave, and then when the Egyptian pilots started to enter their planes, they attacked again, but this time with heat-guided missiles. And the point of that was that once you start the engine, then you no longer are forced to waste munition, because heat-guided missiles will hit only those planes that emit heat, and fake planes don't emit heat. That was the brilliance of the operation. And once the Israelis pretty much destroyed the entirety of the Egyptian Air Force, they had air superiority and were able to kill a lot of Egyptian soldiers with napalm, actually. Yeah, so that was a pretty brutal war. And finally, I want to say something about the Yom Kippur War. The Yom Kippur War started when Nasser, or the Egyptians, decided to take back the land that Israel took away from them in the 6-Day War. And in that war, Soviets were allied with Egypt and with the broader Arab coalition, while the Americans were allied with Israel. And that conflict almost ended up in a nuclear war, in a nuclear exchange between the Americans and the Soviets. We forget how often that stuff used to happen back in the day, back during the Cold War. It's not like the Cuban Missile Crisis was the only event that almost led to the nuclear exchange. So what happened? After Egypt started losing the war, the Soviets or Brezhnev claimed that now he will attack Israel, and then Nixon decided to threaten Egypt with nukes. Nixon said, I'll throw a nuke on Egypt if the Soviets don't back down. And Nixon was also being impeached at the time. So some historians think that maybe he was trying to distract from the impeachment. Others think that he was playing a madman. I would argue that if he was doing it, then he's doing it much better and in a much more productive way than Donald Trump, but okay. And yeah, so Nixon threatened to throw nukes on Egypt, and yeah, then the Soviets, fortunately for us, did not respond with threatening to nuke Israel or the West, but yeah, that could have ended very badly. But okay, if you like this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe.